Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them, or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 4,175 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Well, if you haven't noticed, I am holding a cat. This is Other Kitty. Long story about his name. We didn't get some great news, guys. So this week I was supposed to do the 40th Xbox 360 video, but instead we're doing a pivot because I really haven't had much time to do anything game related. So we're talking about some Switch games. I have a bunch of Switch games in my collection. Let me know if that's something that interests you guys. We can do more of them. And, you know, some nice words for this cat who likely by the time you're watching this won't be here anymore. But anyways, if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out.
There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so the first game we're going to take a look at here is one that when it came out, everyone in the world was wondering why it said it was a limited time game, and then, of course, it went out of print, and the copies started to go up and up and up, and it likely is going to keep going up, and that is Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Strangely, it does not have Mario Galaxy 2, but it does have Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy. Now, they're all, I want to say, upscaled to 1080p, but they didn't do any improvements. So it's not like they redid Mario 64 in Mario Odyssey's engine, which I'd love to see. But it is one of those things where it's just fun to be able to play these games in an official capacity other than the N64. Though Analog 64 is coming out, which, you know, I'm sure that'll be cool. But I've played a little bit of this game. Now, Mario Sunshine, I think, gets way too much hate. It was not really a game that anyone kind of looked cross towards until, I want to say, after the Galaxy duology came out. And then you started saying, people say, oh yeah, Sunshine isn't that good. Like, yeah, I know that the gimmick's a little overdone. I wish it wasn't all just island themed, but as far as games go, it was a solid game, though my favorite parts of it typically were when you lost the jetpack. I think it's aged pretty dang well. It's a fun game. If you give it a shot, it is one that is better than you've heard. But yeah, that that triple pack has just been going up. I think it's like around $100 now. But keep an eye out for that one. If you ever find it cheap, grab it. You're not going to regret it. They're all great Mario games. Alright, one that I have talked about before. If you like old school Castlevania or old school Zelda 2 type action, Infernax is a great one to look after. Now, one of the nice things about the Switch is it is truly region free. So if you buy a copy that runs in English that came out in PAL territories, or if you get it in a Japanese release, but it's got the English on it, you can play it. Yes, I know I've had some comments in recent weeks that think I don't understand how region-free works. There were some games on the 360 that were region-free. Not the system, the games. But on the Switch, all the games are region-free. So even though I don't have the NTSC release, which I think Limited Run did, which I wish I'd picked up, I was able to get this for like $20. Well worth it. You have the ability to make some decisions in the game where you can decide to kill an enemy or not, or side with someone or not. And then it opens up different pathways throughout the rest of the game, as well as you can have different playthroughs depending on who you're playing as, and there's even a co-op mode. So there is an exceptional amount of replayability in this game. I only just scratched the surface when I did beat it, but the dungeons are fun, the gameplay is fun. It reminds me, like I say, Zelda 2, because when you die you have that classic background like you would in Zelda 2 when you died. Just another great one to keep an eye out for if you like those retro style games, which the Switch is huge for. There is a lot of retro style games. Speaking of retro style games, this is a game that you can still find cheap. It is still out there. It's at Targets. It's at Walmart. You can order it online. There's a collector's edition, which is more expensive, as well as, I think, some of the first print runs that still include the completionist before he was removed, or maybe it's just the patch removes him, but that game is Sea of Stars. And I kickstarted this damn game, and for some reason, I did not kickstart it with the physical copy, like an idiot, and I almost missed the boat on this one. I finally found it for a decent price at Target, I want to say, maybe couple of months ago or sometime around Christmas. And what's interesting about this, plays similar to, you know, a 16-bit RPG. It's kind of like Chrono Trigger. You either play, well, not either play, you get to start off if you're going to play as Luna or Sol. So one has moon powers, one has sun powers, but it doesn't really matter. You always have the two of them in your party, and then you get a third party member that can rotate throughout the game. And it's one of those things where I think the writing style, because this is the same company that did The Messenger, the writing style really worked in 2018, but now in 2023, it's getting a little much. Like the whole millennial Zoomer writing, lol so random, nothing serious, nothing is earnest. I don't know about you guys, but I am so over it. It's one of the main reasons why when I played Wilder Myth, I kind of just couldn't care less, just because there's no stakes. Everything is so, well, that just happened, oh my goodness, it's right it's right behind me, or oh, this is what we do now, or just like, oh, you should obviously cut the red wire, that's what they did in Die Hard. That kind of taking you out of the moment, breaking the fourth wall. But Sea of Stars has some of that, but not all over the place. At least Sol and Luna, they seem kind of serious, but everyone around them is just so unserious. However, the gameplay, the graphics are top notch. And famously, when I played the demo of this, I was not all that sold on it, but I did try it because I backed it, so I played the whole thing once I got it, put 30 hours into it, really, really liked it. And there's even a secret ending where you can rescue one of the party members in a dramatic way that I have not gone through and done. Maybe I will someday. And what's also nice is that it directly ties into The Messenger. So it takes place in the same universe. So there's a part in the game where you go to a land where you're going through stages of The Messenger with the same music, but instead of it being a side scroller, it's now in isometric view as an old school RPG, and it's very, very cool. As someone who loved The Messenger, Sea of Stars, that one little thing really made it worth it. And speaking of The Messenger, another game you should get on the Switch before it goes up more is The Messenger. Now, there's multiple versions of The Messenger. There's the one that was released, I want to say, from Special Reserved Games. This is one of the first ones they did. And then there was another one done by Limited Run Games. And if you go on price charting, it's hard to know which one is the expensive one. I believe it's not this one. The one with the blue cover is the expensive one. However, throw all that out the window, because I think they're actually releasing a version of The Messenger now, like as of right now, you can go and order it, that has this and the DLC, so the Island DLC on cart, either for the Switch or the PS5. Am I going to triple dip on that game because I bought it digitally? I bought the physical edition. As you can see, I didn't open it. That's what's funny about the Switch. Most of these games aren't even going to be open. Neither are these, like Sea of Stars isn't open. This one isn't open. Am I going to open them down the line? Probably. But I don't care. But I just have so many sealed Switch games. It's ridiculous. But The Messenger, very, very fun game that starts off like a Ninja Gaiden clone, and then you quote-unquote beat it, and then it turns into a Metroidvania where you can then go through the stages, like the 6 stages, and then find alternate pathways going back from 8-bit mode to 16-bit mode. And the writing works in this game. This is one of those examples where it was fresh. Maybe if you're coming in it with 2025 eyes now, it won't be, but at the time, I really appreciated the humor. The little mage dudes that look directly from the guys on the old Genesis game Rings of Power were really fun, and just overall, I enjoyed the hell out of this game, and still one of the best games on the Switch, and it's on everything too. It's on the PS4, PS5, but I really, really enjoyed playing it on the Switch when it came out in 2018. I remember the release trailer. It was like a sizzle reel where they showed that game, just the gimmick of going from 8-bit to 16-bit within the same stage, and then seeing how the graphics transmit. Like, this is where indie games are cool, is when they do stuff like that. And that is a great one. Now, this one is the famous Nintendo Switch misprint, from, I want to say, the first year of the Switch's existence. They made a remaster of Darksiders, which is a game I talked about in the 360 series, as well as, I've talked about multiple ones, but the first Darksiders, which is the War Master Edition, had a misprint where the case, instead of having the red spine, was black. I don't know how many of these got out. I definitely just bought it for the misprint, because you're going to see a lot of these things now in the Switch era, is that you got people that are hardcore collectors and they're buying to collect. So you're probably going to see a ton of these things sealed. Are they worth that much? I don't know. It does make a glaring error in my Switch wall over there, because it's the only lone black part. But if you're into that kind of collecting oddity, and it's a fun game, bar none. It's a really fun game. I haven't played the War Masters Edition. It's just a remaster, but from what they've done, it's just the same game. A little bit better graphics. No bonus content as far as I know. But a really, really solid God of War, Ocarina of Time style game that we don't really get much of anymore. So that one, and if you're interested in a fun misprint for your Switch wall, there you go. Now, here's one that came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. It was a remaster of a Super Famicom game using the Octopath Traveler 2.5 HD graphics, and I am just a sucker for that style. If any game comes out that even looks like it could use some semblance of those graphics, I'm in. Day one purchase. This happened to be a game that I covered all the way back in 2015 when I was doing Japanese translated games, and that game is Live Alive. This was actually the 4th game I ever covered on the channel. The Switch remaster not only embodies the essence, the spirit, pretty much one of the greatest remasters I've ever played. Like, it's up there with Resident Evil Remake as far as it embodies the original while also not changing it fundamentally. So there's a very interesting combat system in Live Alive where it is a grid-based system, but it takes place on an isometric grid, similar to, say, if you've played South Park Fractured But Whole. And you can move, and you can interrupt the enemy while they're moving. They can interrupt you, and they've altered it from the original game even to where now you can see the bar over your head. So when someone's going to attack, you can see on the level where they're going to attack. And then they've added an ending. So the ending in Live Alive is you beat so there's 7 different chapters. After you beat each one, you then go back to the main menu and can continue to beat the rest of them. And they all have some sort of generic RPG concept using the same combat style, but a dramatically different story. You have cowboy, you have robot, you have caveman, you have futuristic. It's like all these different tropes that have a bite-sized, maybe 5 to 10 hour RPG within it, or not even, like more like 4 to 5. Like for instance, the fighter RPG is just nothing but fights. I did a full review of this game. If you guys are interested in it, look it up on the channel. It's there. But really, really cool. After you beat those 7, you unlock an 8th chapter, which is a play on the classic Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest trope, where you're playing as a knight, going to save the princess. Then Chapter 9 allows you to then decide which side are you going to fight for, good or evil. And what's so cool is that in this game, if you go on the good side, they've completely altered the ending to allow you to now gather all of the Live Alive characters and then have a gigantic battle to save the day, essentially. So the way the original game ended was kind of bittersweet as far as one of the characters really got the shaft. I even said it in my original review. Versus here, if you manage to get everyone and do it the right way and get the best ending, you can change that. And it's such a good game. It's such an invigorating moment being able to fight a boss with a turn-based RPG like this where you have 8 characters is insane and was such a cool way to finish the game. Highly, highly recommend it. All right, couple left here. So this is a game that I think was a limited run games release and just has a classic PC game of the late 80s, early 90s feel. It even allows you to change the graphical style to look like individual PCs of the time. But it's more or less when you were in school, I don't know if you guys had this, but when you were in school, they would always do these things where it was a logic game where you would get these clues, and then based on those clues, you would then have to infer other things. So if they tell you, John and Lisa were skiing, and then there was 3 pairs of snow boots missing, and then another one that says John, Lisa, and Jack were seen with their snow boots on, you could infer then, okay, so the 2 that were skiing would have this and that, so it plays on the logic of who is around there, and then through there you would make assumptions, and that's how this game, Return of the Obra Dinn, works. So Return of the Obra Dinn, you are an inspector going to the mythical Obra Dinn and finding out what happened to the ship that just appeared. And there's stories of this happening in literature where ships just show up and the entire crew is missing. And even looks like they were in mid-eating. Like, it makes no sense. So I don't believe the Obra Dinn was a real ship. I think this is made up, but it's evoking the thoughts of those ships that were real back in the 1800s. And so in this, you're given a manifest of who was on it, and you find these carcasses, and you have this special stopwatch that allows you to view their death moments as well as investigate the scene. So you can pause the reality and then walk around, see who was there, notice, oh, the guy with the scar on his face was here, and then you'll see later on, you'll see a chart where the guy with the scar on his face is talking to another guy in Russian, and from there you'll get a list of manifest names, and you can say, almost like in Clue, the Russian guy died, whose name is, Vladimir, died via a spear to the head on the deck. And if you get enough of those assumptions correct, the game will then write them down in stone if you've gotten it. So if you're on the right path, the game lets you know, okay, you're on the right path. Now, there are some slight variances on this too. So if someone got skewered versus stuck versus stabbed versus whatnot, it allows for that level of valence where you can kind of figure it out. But it's not going to solve for it if you have the wrong name or the wrong title, that kind of thing. And it's very, very engaging. It's not something that you can play endlessly. So it's, the replay value is maybe you'll play it one time and then come back to it. As well as the inspector is randomized, so you either play as a male or female inspector. Doesn't affect anything. It's the same game regardless. But it's just so damn engaging seeing what happens. And if you manage to solve for the mystery of everyone, there's even a bonus chapter you can unlock. And you can find yourself almost like Inception, where within a scene you can then find another scene and then go from one scene to the next. And then when you get back to the ship, it then guides you. It's fun. It's a very, very fun experience. Little Lovecraftian at times because there is a giant monster kraken at one point, but it's a cool game. Check it out if you ever have a moment. Now, speaking of cool games that use Lovecraftian monsters, is a game that I picked up because of a Legally Insane Gamer recommendation, and that is Carry On. So Carry On is another Special Reserves game, I believe. And you can still find copies of it for not too expensive, like $30, $40. And in this game, you play as this big, red, tentacled creature that is in somewhat of a Metroidvania, where you're trying to escape a lab, and you get to be the guy who eats people. So you eat other people trying to stop you, and as you eat them, you get bigger. And you're trying to run your infection throughout the lab until you can eventually escape and, eat the planet. And it's one of those games where it's very fun, it's very cool, it's a unique concept. There's not all that much substance. I'm sure there's a story. I've gotten to the part, so I played a little bit of it where I've gotten to a part where now I think the creature gets contained, and then you're going in as a human trying to wipe up the problem. But it's a really, really cool concept and a really fun game, and one that is just, it's nice playing as an evil creature eating people sometimes. It's not something you get to do too often in games. Usually you're fighting against these things. All right, last couple. This one was an absolute shock when they announced it, mainly because of one of the games that was on it was getting an official translation and release after almost 30 years at the time, and that is the Collection of Mana. This comes with the first 3 Mana games. So Secret of Mana 2 we used to call it, so that's Trials of Mana. But the original game, which the games are called Seiken Densetsu, in the East, but we had, I think it's Final Fantasy Adventure. Yeah. So what they would do back then, Squaresoft would do back in the early 90s, is they would take their games, because Final Fantasy did well, they would just slap Final Fantasy on it. So that's why you had Seiken Densetsu become Final Fantasy Adventure. The Saga Frontier series, I believe, is Final Fantasy Legend. Basically, slap Final Fantasy. It's the same kind of thing that Super Mario did with Yoshi's Island. So that's why you have Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island, even though it's really just Yoshi's Island. It's a way to get a fan base to go and buy the game without trying it. So, and for the most part, because the game's played similarly or, evoke the same style, people liked them. But yes, Trials of Mana had never been released. I did a video in 2015, back when we still called it Secret of Mana 2 or Seiken Densetsu 3. And this was a game that came out late in the Super Nintendo's lifespan. And it was a huge game where you could choose 3 of 6 characters at the offset, but there was 3 different end bosses, and depending on who you made your leader, you would get one of those end bosses. And as you progress through the games, you would run into the other 3 characters you did not choose. You would see the backstories, as well as you would see the other main villains for the other 2 alternate endings that eventually would get wiped out depending on who was your leader. And when I did it, I picked my leader as Kevin the werewolf, who there's a day-night cycle in this game, and at night you turn into a werewolf and get stronger, and daytime you're not. All in all, phenomenal game. It is, in my opinion, is probably a better game than Secret of Mana. It did not have a 3-player co-op mode, but it did have a 2-player co-op mode. So Secret of Mana still has that over it, but just overall a phenomenal game. And Final Fantasy Adventure is a lot of fun too. It's a nice prototypical action RPG for back in the day. Although when I played it, I did not get the damn ice spell, so I got really freaking stuck at one point and had to manipulate a bunch of stuff. But I managed. And then the last game we're going to talk about is one that I played recently that I really, really enjoyed, and that is Fights in Tight Spaces. And what this game is trust me, I'm not a huge deck builder, card-based playing guy. I mean, maybe I am, but the way this game works is think of it like a tactical RPG where you get a certain amount of moves, or not certain, but you get move sets that you can use to get out of these fights in tight spaces. And then the different enemies, the way they work is they will attack on a set pattern. So if you're directly in front of them and if you just move to the side, they won't be able to attack you. So you can interrupt their abilities by moving. You get a certain amount of move points in each one of your turns, and then that correlates to how many of the different card moves you can use. And as you progress through the game, you then can select new abilities to add to your deck until you beat the game. And this is one of those ones that's like Slay the Spire or Balatro. However, in this game, you don't die. So if you die, you can restart the level. Now, I got all the way to the end of the game with just a deck I was building by the seat of my pants. The last section, you're on a plane fighting against another secret agent, and it's very, very difficult. In fact, think of it like this. The game's kind of like this, and then it majorly spikes. And on the last fight, I almost couldn't do anything. And the way this game works is when you start the level, you're going to draw the same order of cards. Now, the enemies might move differently, but the card order will always be the same. And you can change alternate paths. You can decide to heal. When you take damage, it persists into the next level. There's different cards that you have to manipulate the environment. One of the funnest things is there's ring outs. So if you throw people outside of the fight area, it insta-kills them. But then when you get to the last level, all the enemies you can't push them or pull them. They will turn to face you whenever you move. So it just gets dramatically unfair or just dramatically difficult if you don't know that going into it. However, I did manage to still beat it on my first playthrough using the cards I built as I played it, because I'm good at these kind of games. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is still a game that you can buy off, I think it's Special Reserve Games, is that who did it? Or Super Rare Games. There's so many of these damn things. Super Rare, it was only released in PAL territories. Once again, Switch is region free, and one I highly recommend. There's also a sequel they did, not in the same vein, but it's called Nights in Tight Spaces, that looks interesting too. Though I've heard it's not as good, but it's really cool, striking black and white visuals with a little bit of pop of red. I enjoyed it. One I would highly recommend. And there you have it, guys. There are 10 Switch games you should go out and pick up before they get more expensive. Let me know what you thought of this video. Are you guys interested in the Switch content? Give some love to my cat. I know you guys have probably gone through some of this. I've had pets pass before. It's never easy, but man, it's definitely, we're in the thick of it right now. So after this, I'm probably gonna go back to giving him lots of cuddles, and yeah, it just sucks. But anyways, I appreciate all you guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.